Alabama's in-depth source for statewide news. This is For the Record with Tim Lennox.
Good evening. The textile industry has been moving out of Alabama for decades, headed to places like Mexico. Left behind in many Alabama river towns, huge empty mill buildings and thousands of workers without jobs. Tonight on a special For the Record in-depth presentation, we tell the story of efforts in several Alabama towns to reuse the buildings and to retrain the workers. You can find American history in the air in this old textile mill building in Valley. The sails for old Ironsides were made here, and there are generations of personal history as well.
My grandparents worked in the mill, and aunts and uncles. My mother worked in the mill for a while, so it's been a part of the fabric of my growing up.
And Jim Jones is himself a mill worker in the Chambers County town of Valley on the Alabama-Georgia line.
Yes, I currently work with West Point Stevens and have actually worked with them around 30 years.
But Jones is part of a shrinking American workforce. Fewer and fewer Americans are working in mills because companies are moving those operations to countries where the cost of labor is a fraction of what they have to pay in places like Alabama. That decline has been especially noticeable during the past 15 years. There were 20,200 textile workers in Alabama in 1990. As of May of this year, that number had dropped to below 12,000. The city of Valley, Alabama is on the border with Georgia. The city was, in effect, knitted together from 4 old mill towns, places where tens of thousands of Alabamians made a living for many decades. Now there's an effort in Valley to take this old mill building and turn it into something else. And city officials have achieved a $50,000 ADECA grant to help find out what that something else might be. Jim Jones' concern about the declining textile business and this empty mill building stems from the fact that in addition to being a mill worker, he's also a city councilman.
And from a council member, I see this as a way to kind of offset some of the job losses, as well as to keep the mills from becoming a blight on the community, as well as providing possible economic recovery for our city. And once again, we're very excited about the possibilities associated with the project.
The city of Valley bought this old mill last year at a bargain basement price of just $300,000. Recently, the Alabama Department of Economic and Community Affairs, ADECA, awarded Valley a $50,000 grant to study ways to make the old mill come alive again.
The money will be used, Tim, for an architectural firm to come in and work with us on determining the best use for the property. And we feel very good about the project and the direction that we're going in now. We've already interviewed 4 or 5 different architectural firms that will be potentially working with us. We've also advertised in Montgomery to get other architectural firms to talk with us. We need to find a real good fit between what we're doing and what they can provide us long term.
If you could look into a crystal ball and look down 20 years from now, what do you think where we are now? What is this going to look like? What would you like it to be?
I think it'll be a very vibrant, almost like a downtown area for the city of Valley. We currently do not have a downtown area, and we're putting a lot of stock in the fact that we can bring in retail, shops, restaurants, possibly a hotel and convention center, as well as loft apartments, possibly a farmer's market. There are a lot of ideas that we're currently working with.
Those are really big plans.
Big plans, very big plans. But we are dedicated to this project. Our council is behind it 100%, and we see it as a doable thing.
There's a lot of history inside this building if you look around. So this mill dates to just after the Civil War?
1866 is when the first stone was laid for the building. And It has been a very integral part of the community since 1866. Of course, we've had a decline in the textile industry, which has been a loss of jobs, a loss of citizens in the community.
Here in Prattville, in Autauga County, just north of the capital city, a lot of people wanted to see another old mill turned into something productive. Unfortunately, 5 teenage boys playing in the basement of the old mill started a fire that destroyed the structure. All that's left is this grassy field. The fire on the night of September the 10th, 2002 lit the night sky as firemen from a half-dozen area departments tried to bring it under control. Ironically, part of what makes old mill buildings charming and valuable, the century-and-a-half-old heart pine floors and the huge wooden support beams, became gourmet food for the blaze, making it impossible for the firemen to do anything but prevent the flames from spreading beyond the 2 main buildings. The teenagers were charged with theft of property and arson and were later convicted. When did you find out that the mill was on fire?
The next morning. They did not call me. My daughter came by early in the morning. She's a school teacher and called me and told me.
How'd you feel?
Oh, when I didn't know till I got there, and I was just devastated. Couldn't imagine it ever happened.
71-year-old Jim Crosby was manager of the mill till his retirement in 1994.
You could feel the heat 2 blocks away, and by the time I got there, most of the flames were out. But I just could not visualize in my mind that the mill was gone. It was hard to accept.
Wayne DeLoach is a retired English professor who wrote a history of the old mill.
Well, Daniel Pratt is quoted as having said that he wanted to give employment to as many people in the county as he could. Now, whether that can be taken at face value or not is debatable. But a lot of people were employed here, and when they were questioning people after the fire, a lot of people had some very pleasant memories of the place. So a lot of people did start working here when they were young. Some stayed here throughout their working career. But I think James Crosby said something that was important about how much the mill meant to the town and to city and to the county.
After World War II, in I believe 1945, a company out of North Carolina bought the mills to take the machinery out and move them up and close the mill. And a few of the people in town got together and met with a gentleman whose name was Mr. Robert Gurney, and the possibility of keeping the plant here and keeping it going. And they all bought some stock in it to give it a little incentive, and the mill was put back in operation. If not, it would have been closed back in 1945.
Although there's little left of the historic mill built by the city of Prattville's founder, there is an extraordinarily accurate record of the structures. In the summer of 1998, a program called the Historic American Engineering Record brought draftsmen, photographers, and engineers to Prattville to make a record of the old mill, including detailed architectural drawings. At the time, the project's Richard O'Connor told For the Record of the mill's historic importance.
You find that not only here but throughout the country. You have exactly the same kinds of things. You have either textile mills or cotton gin factories or steel mills or foundries or railroads or something like that, some industrial or engineering structure or site that employed a big portion of the people that live in the town, was indeed a main source of the town's livelihood for a large period of its history. And these things are beginning to fail. And what do we have left once they're gone? Some people have a few memories, but once they die, those memories are gone too.
What did you want to see happen to the building?
I'd hope somebody might put a businesses in there before. You were talking about prior to it burning, yeah.
Right.
Put business in, they talked about apartments, and they talked several different things, but nothing ever materialized. It all was going to take a lot of money.
The cities of Prattville and Valley have a lot in common when it comes to a desire to reclaim old textile mill buildings, and when it comes to textile workers who are either unemployed or who are about to be. Here in Tallahassee, Alabama, there are mills on both sides of the Tallapoosa River. At one point, during the heyday in this city of mill work, there may have been 4,500 workers at these two mills. That was around World War II. Then came the 1970s, the oldest of the two mills, the one on this side of the river. It closed down and now is slowly being recaptured by the earth. Soon, a month or so from now, the newest of the two mills, the one on the other side of the river, it too will close for good, and another 311 textile workers in Tallahassee will be without jobs. Robert Payne knows how those workers feel. He was laid off from the Mount Vernon mill in 1977. Back then, Payne worked in the oldest mill building, the one built in 1844. It's probably too late to save that mill building now. The company sold the interior heart pine lumber to a salvage company, and all that's left is the brick shell.
My heart goes out to the people that work there because they're, you know, a lot of those that's where they've worked. That's where they've been really all their life. Let's say a guy's 45 years old. He started out working there when he got out of high school at 20, and then maybe went to the service and got out of the armed forces and then came back. Well, I like what my daddy did, so I'm gonna work here. Well, let's say he's a technician there on a loom. And he knows that loom. He's like a surgeon when he starts working on that loom, and he knows everything there is to know about that piece of machinery. And then what happened? Then all one day he wakes up and it's gone. And so now that, you know, he's got to get away from that and then go to something brand new tomorrow.
Not long before Payne was laid off from the mill, he was elected to the Tallahassee City Council. In 1988, he was elected the town's mayor. Just as his life as a textile worker is long gone, Mayor Payne says the industry itself is now just a part of Alabama history.
Oh, I think it is. I think it's over with. You know, for the next number of years, I'm sure it's over with for sure. But now, you know, like this closing, this has been a terrible news for us because it's just like losing a member of the family. The old timers here in the city of Tallahassee, they'll talk about, well, there's two things that's always running here, and one's the river, and the other thing is the mill. And of course, now the river's continuing to run. You can hear it right now, but the mill's, you know, will be closed. I've always taken a lot of pride when you welcome different groups to the city of Tallahassee. I've always taken great pride in saying, you know, we're proud that we're the home of Tallahassee Mills, the oldest continuously operating textile industry in America. But you know, I can't say that after September the 1st. It's going to be a tough time for everybody, especially those 250 or 300 folks that's going to be losing their jobs. Now, a lot of those people, and I feel very confident about this, that a lot of those people are going to be able to get jobs either at Neptune or GKN. GKN has been a real superstar in hiring these some of the textile people, you know, that's been laid off. In fact, I talked to a lady just the other day that's already working at GKN, doing good and just happy as she can be.
Is the whole situation with the textile industry something that is beyond your control or beyond the government's control, and this is just the way the world is changing and we have to adapt? I
think it's just the way the world's changing. We have to adapt to it. And of course, the foreign imports, you've heard about that, and you've heard about jobs leaving and people not buying America. You know, but everybody did. I think all the industries and everybody else did everything they could possibly do and buy American, buy this and buy that, but they did all they could do. But you know, none of that worked. Inside the Mount Vernon mill that will close its doors at mid-September, plant manager Hollis Mann and administrative manager Rodney Griffith give us a tour of the soon-to-be ended mill operation. Bales of cotton are pulled apart by machine, part of the centuries-old process of turning plant fiber into cloth.
More cleaning, get up close. It's been through a cotton gin, so it's a lot cleaner than when it came out of the field, but we still have to get a lot of this out.
All these little pieces of whatever twig and all?
There's pieces of stick, leaf and sticks.
Right.
Most of the time, most of the seed's gone, but there's some seed residue in it.
Right. Now, and again, the man-made over there doesn't have any of that in it.
No, it's perfectly clean. Unless we get something on it, putting it in here, it's clean.
What are you going to do personally when the mill closes?
I'll probably be looking for
a different career, employment in a different line of work.
Will you miss this?
Well, certainly. I've been doing it for 32 years. Rodney's been doing it for 36 years.
Tell me for a minute about the first day that you worked in the plant. What did you do? What was your job?
It was in the summer between quarters at Auburn, and my brother worked here. He worked in a department called the cloth room, and that's just where we inspected the cloth and rolled the cloth into a finished roll to go to our customers. And I needed a summer job, and came down one morning and interviewed. Once I knew the personnel manager anyway, and he said, "Well, when can you start work?" And I said, "Today." He said, "We'll be back at 2 o'clock." So that's what I did. I worked in the cloth room, doffing tables, which was taking rolls of cloth off of an inspection, putting rolls of cloth onto an inspection table, and after they inspected it, taking it off. Well, no, I just know looking at it, that's 100% cotton, and this is synthetic polyester cotton.
I see.
This is lighter weight, almost like a sheeting weight fabric.
Right.
Maybe weighs 2 ounces a square yard. That weighs 6 to 7 ounces per square yard, and again, I know it because
You've
it's
been
cotton.
around it a little
well,
bit.
it's really it's the only cotton fabric we're making right now, so that's the apparel. But it's a twill, just like pants, skirts,
Right.
and cotton twill, and that's what it's. Well, I say pants. Some of it goes into shirting too,
Right.
casual, and then some of it can be work clothes.
So I know there's no way you can know this, but there are like 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 5 of us right now in this room. Do you think any of us have on a piece of clothing that was really made in the United States?
I think the pants I have on are. I'll have to take them off to see. You want to check my label right now?
When you're shopping,
Seriously.
do you look
No,
for labels?
I do. Yes, I do, to be honest with you, but sometimes it's harder
and harder.
It's hard to find just the American label. Denim may be easier. I don't buy a lot of denim jeans, but it's hard to find, or at least sometimes the label will say U.S. materials, but it may be a symbol somewhere else, and that's
It's like cars in a way.
Yeah, well, that's right.
The parts may come from who knows where, and they may be assembled here.
That's right. But I'm sure we're wearing some American apparel, or the linings, or whatever we have on. But
I want to check my what is it? Can you see that? It says cotton.
That's wool.
But even if my jacket is American-made, there is simply not enough clothing and cloth being produced in America. Companies like Mount Vernon are closing because workers in other countries will do the same work for pennies on the dollar. And American consumers help that happen by buying clothing at discount retail giants like Walmart. Those companies achieve their famous low prices in part by buying imported clothing.
About 50 of the Mount Vernon workers who are soon to be out of work are here at Tallahassee City Hall. They're meeting with representatives of the Office of Workforce Development. They've sent a rapid response team to Tallahassee in order to tell the workers what kind of benefits are available to them, whether they might go back to school or learn a completely new trade.
I'm Alan Friday. I'm with the State Dislocated Worker Unit out of Montgomery. Before I get started, though, I want to find out where everybody lives.
Job assistance is handled on a county-by-county basis, and these workers live in several nearby counties. Friday and his team have already met with 2 other groups of workers from the mill, explaining the federal assistance they're eligible for.
We're going to talk to you about some services and some programs, some of which you may have heard about, maybe have even used in the past, and some that you are probably not aware of. And hopefully you will be able to do one thing. You will be able to take this information, to use it, and to help you decide